Hi, today is a big day politically. We have a new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, our 57th Prime Minister. When the results were read out by the 1922 committee, it wasn't surprising. Sunak was well ahead. Um, I think honestly, Penny Mordaunt's campaign was kind of prolonging the inevitable because they just didn't seem to have the numbers. I don't know how many of Boris Johnson's supporters went over to her, but last night and this morning they were sounding optimistic, but I think it was just so that it wasn't a coronation. Let me just cut to the chase. This is historic. Rishi Sunak is Britain's first Prime Minister of Asian descent, our first British Asian Prime Minister. I mean, you know, we could look at the situation, we could look at the context. The Tories are in a bit of a mess, and this is not really a normal time. Um, Also, we're not a presidential system, so it's not quite our Obama moment in the sense that Sunak was elected by Tory MPs, not by the people, in the sense that we're not a presidential system. So it's not quite comparable to, it's not Britain's Obama moment, I don't think. However, it is historic. There is that. He's not actually the first minority prime minister. Technically, that was Benjamin Disraeli, who, of course, was Jewish, but became an Anglican in order to sit in Parliament. Um, but it's significant. Sunak is the first Hindu in the role. He is the first person born in the 1980s in the role, born in 1980. He's only 42 years old. I mean, 5 years older than myself. And that makes him the youngest prime minister actually since Lord Liverpool way back in 1812. Younger than David Cameron, younger than Tony Blair. So there's a number of notable things there. Of course, the Sunaks are very wealthy. There were questions around that. But if I could just tap this in a little bit to the video I made yesterday, I've just been watching India today on YouTube, some of their rolling coverage of this. And of course, it's a big thing in Indian news. Sunak himself was born in Southampton. Even his parents, I believe, were from East Africa. So you have to go back to his grandparents. And this was a point one of the guests was making on India today. I'm guessing it was I'm not sure who that was they were interviewing, but I'm just going to read out some of the headlines that they've had because I think this was interesting and comment worthy. Let's see. Trust tossed. Sunak storms race. Imphy founders Damad is new UK PM. Not sure what that means. Critics laughed as he bowed to cow. I'm not sure what that's referring to. And now he's Prime Minister Sunak. Indian origin Sunak wins PM race. First British Prime Minister under King Charles. Not true. Truss was his first Prime Minister. Rather, Sunak will be the first Prime Minister appointed by King Charles III. Battered Britain gets Desi, big boss. They wrote him off, now he wins. Well, not really. That's a bit of. I don't know if that's referring to the fact he was runner up last time or what. Rishi Sunak enters 10 Downing Street. And yeah, it's just rolling coverage. Um, the host was saying it's a very proud moment for India. I've kind of mixed feelings on that myself because will it mean sort of strengthening Anglo-Indian ties? Maybe. But here's the thing: Rishi Sunak is first and foremost British. He's a British citizen. He will be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So if I hope this doesn't happen, but if there was any sort of tensions with India, Indian nationals shouldn't assume that just because this man is of Indian descent, he's going to somehow not be on the side of the UK. I mean, there are a couple of ongoing issues in British Indian relations. There's the case of a man who's been held for years without trial. I forget his name now, but there's some ongoing legal cases. Um, there's India's stance on the war in Ukraine now. Sunak, like other conservatives, is very much in favour of supporting Ukraine. There's issues like that. So I get the significance of it, and one would totally expect that. But there's a degree of sensationalism and hyperbole around it as well. I mean, I've seen comments like, now the Brits, the colonized becomes the colonizer, and it's stuff like this. It's like that's absurd. Rishi Sunak was born in the UK. He's not, and this is coming from Indian nationals I'm talking about. There's a bit of smugness about that, like, oh, the British colonize us now. Now they have an Indian in charge. I guess it is a bit of historic irony, but it's not that surprising. I mean, the British Indian community here is pretty sizable. It's one of our biggest minority groups. So, is it really surprising that at some point we're going to have a prime minister of British Asian descent, and now we have that? I don't think it's like overly surprising. It's historic, but um, so the Indian reactions have mixed feelings about that, basically. Also, it's, if the British people vote against the Tories in the next election, won't be because of racism. It will be because the Tories right now are unpopular. Labour is leading in the polls. So, they tried to twist the coverage of this earlier on in the leadership race. It annoyed me, to be quite honest. They were suggesting it was came down to racism and so on. Now, how widespread are views like that on LBC, the now infamous Jerry from Lowestoft? It's hard to say. It's hard to say how widespread that sort of attitude is, i.e., questioning Sunak's Britishness. It's sort of interesting for people in that situation who are a citizen of a country, but they're an ethnic minority, like, whose side are they on? This sort of question. I think it's absurd. As far as I'm concerned, Rishi Sunak's British, but happens to be of Asian descent. I don't see him as an Indian running the UK, and I think Indian nationalists and far right types, ironically, who look at it that way, they're wrong. He is a British citizen who is now Prime Minister of the UK. Um, there's a lot of things that are going to be on his desk. Certainly, the economy, helping out families with rising fuel costs. These are very important issues. I think it would make sense to keep Hunt on as Chancellor. I don't think changing Chancellor would be a good idea. In fact, honestly, it's probably a good idea not to have a major cabinet reshuffle because there's simply been too much of it this year. I think there needs to be some stability. I would keep Hunt on as Chancellor, probably keep James Cleverly as Foreign Secretary. Shapps has been Home Secretary for a week. The only thing is, if Shapps stayed on, then you'd have four men in the great offices of state. Some feminists might have issue with that. But I think another thing you should do is bring in some opponents. I think bringing Penny Mordaunt to a senior role in cabinet would be sensible because, one mistake Truss made was not doing that. She was just surrounded by loyalists, and that backfired. So I think that's one of Sunak's big challenges. Dare I say it, maybe bring Johnson into the cabinet now. I personally am pleased that Johnson dropped out. I don't think he should have become prime minister again, but maybe to appease the Johnson people, have Johnson in some sort of role. But then again, would Boris Johnson, with his ego, really want a cabinet role if it's not prime minister? Maybe not. Maybe he'll just retreat from politics for a while. Who knows? Anyway, how good a prime minister Sunak will be will remain to be seen. I think he's a very smart guy. I think he done some good things as chancellor. His furlough scheme is to be applauded. Um, Support for businesses. He also predicted what would happen with Truss's budget. On the other hand, there's these tax issues which are controversial. So I don't know. Time will tell. I'm not a Tory, and I'm sure there's areas to take issue with the Tories on, but I would just say to those two groups of people, Indian nationalists who are kind of being a little bit smug about this, Sunak's a British citizen. This is not an Indian running the UK. Let's just dispel that myth. And also to far right types, Sunak's the Prime Minister. And, this notion he's not British enough for your liking also gets dispelled. So time will tell.